The wagon wheel cracked just as Lydia Dawson's husband rode away with another woman, leaving her standing in the middle of the dusty road outside Shoshone, Idaho, with 3 crying children and a broken axle that seemed to mirror her shattered life. It was June 1878, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the high desert plateau of southern Idaho as Lydia stood there in shock, watching the cloud of dust disappear over the ridge. Her 7-year-old daughter Clara clutched at her skirts, while 5-year-old Thomas sat in the dirt crying, and 3-year-old Emma wailed from inside the tilted wagon. Lydia's hands trembled as she reached up to steady herself against the wagon's side, her mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. Robert had left, simply left. After 9 years of marriage, after 3 children, after promising her a new life out west, he had ridden off with that saloon woman from Silver City, taking his horse and leaving them stranded 15 miles outside of town. She had known something was wrong for months, had felt him pulling away, but she never imagined he would abandon them completely. Now she stood here with $43 sewn into her petticoat, a broken wagon, 3 frightened children, and no idea how to fix any of it. "Mama, where did Papa go?" Clara asked, her voice small and frightened. Lydia swallowed hard, forcing herself to be strong. "He had to go somewhere, sweetheart. We need to focus on getting to town now." But how? The nearest ranch was miles away, and she could not leave the wagon with all their possessions. Everything they owned was in that wagon, meager as it was. She looked down the empty road stretching toward Shoshone, then back at the broken wheel, and felt despair threatening to overwhelm her. That was when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching from the direction of town. Lydia's heart seized with fear. She was alone, vulnerable, with 3 small children. She reached into the wagon for Robert's old rifle, which thankfully he had left behind, and held it awkwardly as a single rider came into view. As he drew closer, she could make out a tall man on a paint horse, wearing a dusty brown hat and what looked like working ranch clothes. He slowed his horse as he approached, clearly seeing her defensive posture. "Madam, I do not mean any trouble," he called out, stopping his horse a respectful distance away. "Looks like you have got a situation here." He was younger than she had first thought, perhaps 30 years old, with sun-weathered skin and honest brown eyes that held genuine concern. His dark hair curled slightly beneath his hat, and despite his trail-worn appearance, there was something steady and reassuring about him. "My wheel broke," Lydia said stiffly, still holding the rifle though her arms ached. "We will manage." The cowboy looked at the wagon, at the 3 children, and then back at her with an expression that suggested he could see right through her brave lie. He dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Name is Nathan Zimmerman. I work the cattle ranch about 8 miles north of here, been heading back from town with supplies." He gestured to the pack mule she had not noticed following behind his horse. "That wheel is not just broken, madam. The axle is cracked. You cannot fix that here." Lydia felt her throat tighten. "Then what do you suggest?" Nathan walked closer, stopping when he saw her tense. He crouched down near the wheel, examining it carefully. "This needs a proper wheelwright. The whole axle needs replacing." He looked up at her, and his next words were gentle. "Forgive me for being direct, madam, but where is your husband?" The question broke something inside her. Lydia felt tears spring to her eyes, and she angrily blinked them back. Clara answered before she could. "Papa rode away with a lady. He left us here." Nathan's expression darkened, and he stood up slowly. Lydia saw his jaw clench, saw something fierce flash in his eyes before he carefully controlled it. When he spoke, his voice was measured. "That's so." It was not a question. Lydia lowered the rifle, suddenly too exhausted to maintain her defensive stance. "Yes, About an hour ago. I do not expect him back." Nathan removed his hat and ran a hand through his hair, looking at the children with such genuine concern that Lydia felt her guard dropping despite herself. Emma had stopped crying and was peeking out at him from the wagon with wide, curious eyes. "Madam, I cannot in good conscience leave you here," Nathan said. "The sun is only getting hotter and you have got little ones to think about. My ranch is closer than town. I can take you there, get you out of this heat, and tomorrow we can figure out what to do about your wagon." "I cannot impose on strangers," Lydia said automatically, though she could feel Clara wilting against her in the heat. "It is not imposing when someone offers," Nathan replied. He looked at the children again and his voice softened. "I have got a good well with cold water, and my cook Maria makes the best biscuits in Idaho territory. These little ones look thirsty." Thomas perked up at the mention of biscuits. "I am hungry, Mama." Lydia closed her eyes briefly. Pride warred with practicality, and practicality won. She had to think of her children. "I cannot pay you much." "Did not ask you to," Nathan said simply. He walked back to his horse and began untying some rope from his saddle. "Now, here is what we are going to do. I am going to unhitch your horses, and we will load what you need immediately onto the wagon bed. The children can ride on my pack mule. She is gentle as a lamb. You can ride one of your wagon horses, and I will lead the other. It is not far to the ranch." He moved with such calm efficiency that Lydia found herself simply nodding. Within 20 minutes, Nathan had organized everything. He fashioned a secure seat on the pack mule and lifted Clara and Thomas onto it as if they weighed nothing, talking to them in a low, reassuring voice. Emma he handed up to Lydia once she was mounted, and the toddler settled against her mother with a tired sigh. "Ready?" Nathan asked, looking up at her. Lydia nodded, not trusting her voice. This strange cowboy's kindness was almost harder to bear than Robert's betrayal. She was not used to being helped without expectation of something in return. The ride to the ranch took just over an hour. Nathan kept the pace easy, mindful of the children, and pointed out landmarks along the way. "That is Eagle Rock over there. The Shoshone Paiute tribes used it as a meeting point for generations. Good people. We trade with them sometimes." Clara, who had been silent and withdrawn, perked up slightly. "Are there really eagles?" "Sometimes," Nathan said, smiling at her. "More often hawks. But if you watch at sunrise, you might see a golden eagle hunting. Most beautiful thing you ever saw." He kept up this gentle conversation, slowly drawing the children out of their scared silence. By the time the ranch came into view, even Thomas was asking questions about the horses. The ranch was more substantial than Lydia had expected. A solid 2-story house sat at the center, with a large barn, several outbuildings, and extensive corrals spreading out behind it. Cattle dotted the rolling hills in the distance, and she could see several ranch hands working near the barn. A Mexican woman emerged from the house as they rode up, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded Lydia of her own mother. "Nathan, you are back early," the woman called, then stopped as she took in the scene. Her eyes moved from the children to Lydia's exhausted face, and her expression shifted to one of immediate understanding and compassion. "Maria, we have got guests," Nathan said, dismounting. "This is Mrs." He paused, realizing he had never asked her name. "Dawson." "Lydia Dawson," Lydia supplied, sliding down from the horse with Emma on her hip. "And these are my children, Clara, Thomas, and Emma." "Their wagon broke down on the road," Nathan said, and something in his tone must have communicated more, because Maria's mouth tightened. "I see. Well, come inside immediately. You all look overheated. Nathan, bring their things to the guest rooms." Maria swept forward and gently took Emma from Lydia's arms. Come, little one, let us get you some cool water. Lydia followed Maria into the house, Clara and Thomas trailing behind her. The interior was surprisingly comfortable, with well-made furniture and curtains on the windows. Maria led them to a spacious kitchen and immediately set about pouring water from a large ceramic jug. "Drink slowly," she instructed the children, handing them tin cups. She poured one for Lydia as well, studying her with sharp, knowing eyes. "You look ready to drop. When did you last eat?" "This morning," Lydia said, though it felt like days ago. "The water was blessedly cold and sweet." "That is what I thought. Sit, all of you." Maria pointed to the large table, and Lydia was too tired to argue. Within minutes, Maria had bread and butter on the table, along with cold roasted chicken and fresh berries. The children fell on the food with desperate hunger, and Lydia realized with shame that she had been rationing their supplies too strictly. Nathan came in as they were eating, having stored their belongings. He had removed his hat and washed his face, and Lydia could see him more clearly now. He was handsome in a rugged, honest way, with strong features and those steady brown eyes that seemed to see too much. He poured himself a cup of water and leaned against the counter, watching the children eat with a soft expression. "Maria, can you set up the 2 guest rooms upstairs?" he asked. "Mrs. Dawson and the little girl can take one, the boys the other." "Already planning it," Maria replied. She looked at Lydia. "After you eat, I will draw you a bath. You can rest and we will talk about everything else later." Lydia felt tears threatening again. "You are both so kind." "I do not understand why." Nathan met her eyes. "Because it is the right thing to do. Because those children need help. Because—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because everyone deserves a helping hand when life knocks them down." There was something in his voice, some old pain, that made Lydia wonder what had knocked him down in the past. But she was too exhausted to ask. She simply nodded and turned her attention back to making sure her children ate. That evening, after baths and a proper meal, after her children were tucked into clean beds in a safe house for the first time in weeks, Lydia finally allowed herself to break down. She sat in the rocking chair in her room, looking out at the twilight painting the Idaho mountains purple and gold, and wept quietly into her hands. She was 32 years old, abandoned with 3 children and no prospects. Robert had taken everything except what was in the wagon, and even that was now 15 miles away on a broken axle. She had no family to turn to. Her parents had died 3 years ago, and Robert's family had disowned him when he decided to go west. She was alone in a way she had never been before. A soft knock on the door interrupted her tears. "Mrs. Dawson, it is Nathan. May I speak with you a moment?" Lydia quickly wiped her face and opened the door. Nathan stood there with a cup of coffee in each hand and an apologetic expression. "Maria said you might not be sleeping yet. Thought you might want some coffee. We can talk about your situation if you are up to it." Lydia accepted the coffee and gestured for him to come in, leaving the door open for propriety. They sat in the 2 chairs by the window, and for a long moment neither spoke. "I need to be honest with you," Nathan finally said. "I do not have a lot of spare cash. This ranch does well enough, but expenses are high and profit margins are slim. I cannot just give you money to start over." Lydia's heart sank, but she nodded. "I understand. You have already done more than I had any right to expect." "Let me finish," Nathan said gently. "I cannot give you money, but I can give you work. Maria has been saying for 2 years that she needs help with the house and the cooking, especially during Roundup when we have extra hands to feed. The schoolhouse in Shoshone needs a teacher. They have been advertising for months. Or if you would rather, there are other jobs in town. Point is, you have got options. You do not have to figure this all out tonight." "But I cannot just stay here," Lydia protested. It is not proper. People will talk. Let them, Nathan said with a shrug. Maria is here as chaperone. Your children need stability. You need time to catch your breath and plan. Stay a week. Stay a month. Stay until you figure out what comes next. He looked at her directly, his brown eyes serious. You have been through something terrible today. Do not make big decisions when you are exhausted and scared. Lydia found herself staring at this unexpected cowboy who seemed to understand exactly what she needed to hear. Why are you doing this? Nathan was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. My mother was abandoned by my father when I was 8. She had 3 children too. We would have died that winter if a rancher named Samuel Zimmerman had not taken us in, given my mother work, and eventually adopted all of us. Sam died 5 years ago and left me this ranch. I do not have children of my own, and I reckon this is what Sam would have done, what he taught me to do. Understanding washed over Lydia. You are paying it forward. Something like that. Nathan stood up. Get some sleep, Mrs. Dawson. Tomorrow everything will look a little clearer. After he left, Lydia sat for a long time looking out at the stars beginning to emerge over the Idaho mountains. She thought about the cruel twist of fate that had brought her to this place, but also about the unexpected kindness of strangers. Eventually, she climbed into the comfortable bed and fell into the deepest sleep she had experienced in months. The next morning, Lydia woke to the sound of her children laughing. She bolted upright, momentarily disoriented, before remembering where she was. Quickly dressing, she followed the sound downstairs to find Clara and Thomas at the kitchen table helping Maria roll out biscuit dough while Emma sat in a high chair, her face covered in flour. "Mama," Thomas called excitedly. "Maria is teaching us to make biscuits." Maria smiled at Lydia's stunned expression. "They woke early and were hungry. I hope you do not mind." "Mind? No, I." Lydia felt overwhelmed again by the simple normalcy of the scene. "Thank you. Sit, have coffee. Nathan is out checking the herd but will be back for breakfast." Maria expertly cut out biscuits and arranged them on a pan. "Your children are delightful, very well-mannered." Pride warmed Lydia's chest. Whatever else Robert had been, she had tried to raise good children. "Thank you. They have been through a lot lately." "Children are resilient," Maria said wisely. "More than we think. But they need stability, security. They will find that here for as long as you stay." Nathan returned as breakfast was being served, accompanied by 2 ranch hands he introduced as Pete and Jake. Both men were polite, tipping their hats to Lydia and keeping their curiosity to themselves. The meal was lively, with the ranch hands telling exaggerated stories about ornery cattle that had the children giggling. After breakfast, Nathan asked Lydia to walk with him. They strolled out toward the corrals, where several horses grazed peacefully in the morning sun. "I sent Pete into town this morning early," Nathan said. "He is going to talk to the wheelwright about your wagon and fetch it back here for repairs. Also going to make some discreet inquiries about your husband." Lydia stiffened. "Why?" "Because he left you destitute, and there are laws about that," Nathan said bluntly. "I am not saying we will find him, but if he is still in the territory, he owes you support for those children." "I do not want anything from him," Lydia said, surprised by the vehemence in her own voice. Nathan stopped and turned to face her. "I understand that, but this is not about what you want from him. It is about what those children deserve." Clara should not have to watch her mother struggle because her father was a coward. The truth of his words stung. Lydia looked away toward the mountains rising in the distance. "I do not even know where to start putting my life back together." "One piece at a time," Nathan said. "Today you rest. Let your children play and be children. Tomorrow we can ride into Shoshone and you can see the town, meet people, get a feel for your options. There is no rush." But there was a rush, Lydia thought. Every day she stayed here was another day of charity, another day of dependence. She had been raised to be independent, to earn her own way. "Nathan, I cannot keep accepting your help without giving something in return." "Then help Maria with the cooking and the house," Nathan suggested. "She would appreciate it and you would feel useful. But understand something, Lydia." He used her first name naturally, and something about hearing it in his gentle voice made her heart skip. "You are not a burden. You are a woman who got dealt a bad hand through no fault of her own. Taking help when you need it is not weakness. It is wisdom." Over the following days, Lydia settled into a routine that felt both strange and comforting. She helped Maria in the kitchen, discovering that she enjoyed cooking far more than she had when it was just another endless chore. Maria taught her recipes passed down from her grandmother, and they fell into an easy rhythm of working together. The children blossomed in the safe, structured environment. Clara followed Nathan around like a shadow when he was near the house, peppering him with questions about horses and cattle. Nathan answered each question seriously, treating her curiosity with respect. Thomas became fascinated with the chickens and appointed himself chief egg collector. Emma, at 3, simply soaked up the attention from everyone, her fear and confusion slowly easing. A week after their arrival, Nathan kept his promise and drove Lydia into Shoshone in the ranch wagon. The town was larger than she had expected, with a main street lined with shops, a church, a schoolhouse, 2 saloons, and various other businesses. It was not a rough frontier town anymore, but a growing community with families and established residents. Nathan introduced her to several people: the pastor and his wife, the owner of the general store, the doctor, and finally, the chairman of the school board, a stern-looking man named Mr. Patterson. "Mrs. Dawson, Nathan tells me you might be interested in the teaching position," Mr. Patterson said, looking her over with sharp eyes. "I have not formally taught," Lydia admitted, "but I educated my daughter at home and I had 2 years of normal school before I married." "Can you handle a classroom of 20 children ranging from 6 to 14? Mr. Patterson asked bluntly. Lydia thought of managing 3 children alone on a difficult journey, of keeping them safe and fed and educated while her husband grew increasingly distant and difficult. "Yes, I can." Mr. Patterson smiled slightly. "The job pays $40 a month and comes with use of the teacherage, a small cabin behind the school. Term starts in September, runs through May. Are you interested? $40 a month. It was not much, but it was independence. It was a future." Lydia looked at Nathan, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes," she said firmly. "I am very interested. Then the job is yours, Mrs. Dawson. Come by next week and we will discuss curriculum and supplies." Mr. Patterson shook her hand with surprising warmth. "Welcome to Shoshone." As they walked back to the wagon, Lydia felt lighter than she had in months. She had a job, a real job that would support her children. She would not have to depend on anyone. "You did well," Nathan said, helping her into the wagon. "Patterson is tough, but he is fair. You impressed him." "Thank you for introducing me," Lydia said, "for everything. I do not know how I will ever repay you." Nathan climbed up beside her and took the reins. "I told you there is nothing to repay, but there is something I want to talk to you about." Lydia's heart sank. Here it came, the expectation, the price for his help. She braced herself. "The teaching job does not start until September," Nathan continued. "That is 2 months away. The teacherage is not in great shape. It has been empty for over a year. It needs cleaning and repairs." "I can do that work," Lydia said quickly. "I know you can. But here is what I am proposing. Stay at the ranch until September. Help Maria like you have been. Let your children have a summer of being children instead of worrying about where their next meal comes from. In return, I will pay you $20 a month, same as I pay the ranch hands for cooking duty, and when September comes, I will help you move into the teacherage and fix whatever needs fixing." Lydia stared at him. "You want to pay me to do what I have been doing?" "You have been working," Nathan said simply. "Work deserves wages. Plus, Maria tells me having you there has made her life considerably easier, and she is threatening to quit if I do not figure out a way to make you stay." Despite herself, Lydia laughed. She did not say that. "Maybe not in those exact words," Nathan admitted with a grin. "But close enough. What do you say?" Lydia thought about Clara's laughter as she helped Nathan with the horses, about Thomas's pride in his egg collecting, about Emma finally sleeping through the night without nightmares. She thought about having 2 months to save money to prepare to let her children heal from the trauma of abandonment. "Yes," she said. "Thank you, yes." As they drove back to the ranch, Lydia found herself studying Nathan's profile. He was unlike any man she had ever known. Robert had been charming but selfish, always thinking of his own desires first. Nathan seemed to think of everyone else before himself. He was patient with the children, respectful to her, and kind to everyone on the ranch. She had heard him talking to the ranch hands, treating them as equals rather than subordinates. She had watched him doctor a sick calf with infinite gentleness. She had seen him thank Maria for every meal as if it were a gift rather than an expectation. And she was starting to realize with some alarm that she was attracted to him. It was too soon. It was inappropriate. Her marriage was barely over, her husband might not even be officially gone. But she could not help noticing the way Nathan's eyes crinkled when he smiled, or how strong and capable his hands looked holding the reins, or the way her heart beat faster when he said her name. This was dangerous. She was dependent on his charity, living in his house. Any relationship beyond gratitude and friendship would be complicated and potentially disastrous. She firmly told herself to stop thinking such thoughts. But over the following weeks, those thoughts became harder and harder to ignore. It started small. Nathan teaching Clara to ride on a gentle mare named Daisy, his hand steadying the girl with such patience that Lydia felt her throat tighten. Nathan sitting with Thomas in the evening, teaching him to whittle, carefully showing him how to hold the knife safely. Nathan playing peekaboo with Emma until the toddler collapsed in giggles. He was good with her children, better than their own father had been, but it was not just that. It was the way Nathan asked her opinion about things, respecting her thoughts on everything from the best way to organize the pantry to his concerns about water rights with a neighboring ranch. It was the way he listened when she talked, really listened, his full attention on her as if what she said mattered. It was the evenings on the porch after the children were in bed, when they would sit in the rocking chairs and talk about everything and nothing, sharing their histories and hopes. She learned that Nathan had been married once, briefly, 7 years ago. His wife died in childbirth along with their baby daughter. The pain in his voice when he spoke of it made Lydia want to reach out and comfort him, but she held back. "I thought I would try again eventually," Nathan said one evening, staring out at the sunset. "But it never felt right. The few women I courted, it always felt like we were playing roles rather than really connecting. I started thinking maybe I was meant to be alone." "That is a lonely thought," Lydia said softly. "It was. But then I realized that family is not always about blood or marriage. Maria is family. Pete and Jake are family. Sam Zimmerman was the best father I ever had, and we shared no blood at all." He looked at her then, something unreadable in his eyes. "Family is the people you choose to show up for, the people who show up for you." Lydia felt her breath catch. Was he trying to say something more? Or was she reading meaning into words that were not there? The moment passed as Maria called them in for coffee, but Lydia lay awake that night thinking about Nathan's words. about family, about choosing to show up. July arrived with scorching heat. The ranch work intensified as Nathan and the hands moved cattle to higher pastures. He was gone from dawn until well after dark most days, coming home exhausted and dusty. Lydia found herself watching for his return each evening, telling herself it was just to make sure he ate a proper meal, but knowing it was more than that. She wanted to see him. She missed him when he was gone. One evening, Nathan returned with a nasty gash on his arm from a run-in with barbed wire. Maria was in town visiting her sister, so Lydia took charge, sitting Nathan down at the kitchen table and carefully cleaning the wound. "You need to be more careful," she scolded gently, dabbing at the cut with whiskey. Nathan hissed at the sting. "Wire broke loose," he explained. "Was not expecting it. This needs stitches," Lydia said, examining the gash. "I can do it if you trust me. My mother taught me." "I trust you," Nathan said without hesitation, and the simple confidence in his voice made Lydia's hands tremble slightly. She steadied herself and carefully stitched the wound, Nathan remaining stoically silent despite what must have been considerable pain. When she tied off the final stitch and bandaged his arm, she found his eyes on her face. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You have got gentle hands." "You have got a high tolerance for pain," she replied, trying to lighten the suddenly charged atmosphere. "Most men would have been cursing." "My mother used to say cursing was what people did when they ran out of intelligent things to say," Nathan said with a slight smile. "I try to have intelligent things to say." Lydia laughed, and somehow they were sitting very close together, his good hand resting on the table near hers. She could smell leather and sage and honest sweat, could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Her heart hammered in her chest. "Lydia," Nathan said, his voice rough, "I need to tell you something." Before he could continue, Clara appeared in the doorway in her nightgown, rubbing her eyes. "Mama, I had a bad dream." The moment shattered. Lydia quickly stood up, moving to comfort her daughter. "Come here, sweetheart. Let us get you back to bed." When she came back downstairs 15 minutes later, Nathan was gone, his bedroom door closed. Whatever he had been about to say remained unsaid, and Lydia lay awake half the night wondering what it had been. The next morning was Sunday, and as had become their habit, they all went to church in Shoshone. Lydia had been nervous the first time, worried about being the object of gossip, but the congregation had welcomed her warmly. The pastor's wife, Mrs. Henderson, had taken her under her wing, introducing her to the other women and including her in their sewing circle. After the service, as they were preparing to leave, a woman Lydia had not seen before approached them. She was perhaps 25, beautiful in a sharp-featured way, wearing an expensive dress that seemed out of place in the frontier town. "Nathan," the woman said, her voice saccharine sweet. "How lovely to see you." Nathan's expression became carefully neutral. "Elizabeth, I did not know you were back in town." "Father needed me to handle some business affairs," Elizabeth said, her eyes sliding to Lydia with obvious curiosity and calculation. "Are you not going to introduce me to your friend?" There was something dismissive in the way she said the word friend, something that made Lydia's spine stiffen. Nathan clearly heard it too because his jaw tightened. "This is Mrs. Lydia Dawson, the new schoolteacher." "Lydia, this is Elizabeth Carmichael. Her father owns the bank." "How charming," Elizabeth said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "A schoolteacher, how practical." She turned her attention back to Nathan. "You really must come to dinner while I am in town. Father is so eager to discuss that loan extension you requested." It was a power play, and not a subtle one. Lydia saw Nathan's expression darken, saw him struggle with his temper. Before he could respond, Lydia spoke up. "That is very kind of you, Miss Carmichael, but Nathan is absolutely committed the next few weeks." The ranch work is at its peak, and he barely has time to eat and sleep, let alone socialize. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. I was not aware that Nathan's schedule was yours to manage, Mrs. Dawson. It is not, Lydia said pleasantly, holding her ground. But as someone staying at the ranch, I am quite aware of the demands on his time. I am sure your father will understand that a working ranch cannot simply pause for dinner parties during the busiest season. For a moment, the two women stared at each other, and Lydia saw real hostility flash in Elizabeth's eyes. Then Elizabeth smiled coldly. Of course. How fortunate Nathan is to have someone so concerned about his welfare. She nodded curtly. Good day. As Elizabeth walked away, Nathan let out a long breath. That was uncomfortable. Who is she really? Lydia asked as they walked to the wagon where Maria was entertaining the children. Someone I courted briefly 3 years ago, Nathan admitted. It did not work out. She wanted me to sell the ranch and move to San Francisco with her father's bank money. When I refused, she moved to San Francisco anyway. I did not expect her back. She still has feelings for you, Lydia observed, helping Emma into the wagon. No, she has feelings for what she thinks I could be if I bent to her will, Nathan corrected. There is a difference. On the ride back to the ranch, Lydia thought about Elizabeth Carmichael and her obvious wealth and sophistication. Then she thought about herself, a woman abandoned by her husband with 3 children and barely any prospects beyond a small teaching salary. If Nathan wanted to court someone, Elizabeth would be the logical choice. She had money, connections, beauty. The thought made Lydia's chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with feelings she had been trying not to acknowledge. That evening, after the children were asleep, Nathan found Lydia on the porch. He sat in his usual rocking chair and was quiet for a long moment. What I was trying to say last night, he finally began, before Clara came down. Lydia's heart started racing. You do not have to say anything. Yes, I do, because if I do not say it, I am going to go crazy. Nathan turned to look at her directly. Lydia, somewhere over the past month, I have developed feelings for you. Strong feelings. I know the timing is terrible. I know you are still dealing with your husband's abandonment. I know you are living in my house and dependent on my help, which makes this complicated as hell. But I cannot pretend anymore that you are just a guest, that what I feel is just concern for someone in a difficult situation. Lydia could barely breathe. Nathan, let me finish, he said gently. I am not asking you for anything. I am not expecting anything. You have got enough to deal with without worrying about my feelings. I just needed you to know that when I look at you, I see the strongest, most resilient, most beautiful woman I have ever met. I see someone I want to spend time with, someone I want to know better, someone who makes me laugh and think and feel things I have not felt in years. And if the circumstances were different, if you were not in such a vulnerable position, I would be courting you properly with flowers and Sunday dinners and all the rest. And if I told you, Lydia said, her voice shaking slightly, that I have been thinking about you constantly, that I watch for you to come home every evening, that I lie awake at night remembering the way you look at me, Nathan's expression shifted to one of wonder and hope. Are you saying you feel the same way? I am saying that I am terrified, Lydia admitted. I trusted Robert completely, and he left me stranded with our children. How do I trust my own judgment again? How do I trust anyone? And beyond that, what kind of woman develops feelings for another man barely 2 months after her husband abandons her? The kind who recognizes that her marriage was over long before her husband rode away, Nathan said firmly. The kind who is brave enough to acknowledge honest feelings, the kind who deserves to be happy. Lydia felt tears spring to her eyes. I do not want to be a burden to you. I do not want you to feel obligated to me because you helped me. You could never be a burden, Nathan said. He reached over and took her hand, and the simple touch sent warmth through Lydia's entire body. And what I feel is not obligation. It is admiration. It is attraction. It is the beginning of something that could be love if we let it. I have 3 children, Lydia said, needing him to understand. They come first. They always have to come first. I know that. I would never expect anything else. Nathan smiled. Besides, I am pretty fond of those 3 children. Clara is teaching me that asking why 50 times in a row is actually a valid learning method. Thomas has been showing me that watching ants is more interesting than I thought. And Emma. Well, Emma has already stolen my heart completely. Lydia laughed through her tears. She does have that effect. So here is what I propose, Nathan said, still holding her hand. Let us be honest about what we feel. Let us take this slow. I will court you properly, no expectations, no pressure. If at any point you want me to back off, you say the word. Your teaching job starts in September, and you will have your own place and your independence. This is not about you owing me anything or feeling trapped. This is about 2 people who genuinely enjoy each other exploring what that could become. It was more than Lydia had dared hope for. It was terrifying and wonderful and felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if there was solid ground beyond or a free fall. Okay, she whispered. Let us try. Nathan smiled, and it was like the sun coming out after a storm. He lifted her hand and kissed it gently, and Lydia felt that touch all the way to her toes. Over the following weeks, Nathan courted Lydia with an old-fashioned formality that charmed her completely. He brought her wildflowers from the high meadows. He took her riding to show her the beautiful places on his land, the hidden springs, and the vista points where you could see for miles. He read to her in the evenings from the books he loved, his voice bringing adventures to life. But he also courted her children. He taught Clara to ride properly, her confidence growing with each lesson. He helped Thomas build a wooden fort behind the barn. He played endless games of peek-a-boo with Emma, his patience apparently infinite. Lydia watched him with her children and felt her heart opening in ways she had not thought possible. This was what a father should be. This was what partnership should look like. Maria watched the developing romance with obvious approval. It is about time that man had someone, she told Lydia one afternoon as they baked bread. He has been alone too long, carrying too much by himself. You are good for him. He is good for me, Lydia replied, kneading dough with more force than necessary. Maria, is it too fast? Am I fooling myself? When my Juan courted me, we married after 3 weeks, Maria said with a shrug. We had 42 years together before he died. When you know, you know. The heart does not care about timelines, but not everyone approved. Elizabeth Carmichael made a point of attending church every Sunday while she was in town, and her cold stares made Lydia uncomfortable. Worse, there were whispers. A woman barely separated from her husband, living in another man's house, clearly pursuing him for his money. The whispers reached Lydia through Mrs. Henderson, who came to visit one afternoon with a concerned expression. I feel you should know what is being said, she told Lydia gently. Elizabeth Carmichael is spreading rumors that you deliberately seduced Nathan to secure your position. That you are a scheming woman who trapped him with your children. Lydia felt sick. That is not true. None of that is true. I know that, Mrs. Henderson said firmly. Anyone with eyes can see that what you and Nathan have is genuine. But Elizabeth's father owns the bank and she has influence with certain people. I thought you should be prepared. That evening, Lydia told Nathan about the rumors. His reaction was immediate and furious. That woman, he said, pacing the porch. She cannot stand that I am happy with someone else. Maybe we should pull back, Lydia said miserably. Maybe we should wait until I have moved to the teacherage, until there is more propriety." "No," Nathan said firmly. He stopped pacing and knelt in front of her chair, taking both her hands. "No. I will not let Elizabeth's jealousy dictate my life. I will not let small-minded gossips determine when and how I court the woman I am falling in love with." Lydia's breath caught. "You are falling in love with me, completely," Nathan said simply. "Are you falling in love with me?" She had been trying not to name the feeling, afraid that naming it would make it real and therefore vulnerable to loss. But looking into Nathan's honest eyes, feeling the strength of his hands holding hers, Lydia could not deny the truth. "Yes," she whispered. "I am falling in love with you." Nathan's smile was brilliant. He leaned up and kissed her, gentle and sweet and full of promise. It was Lydia's first kiss as a free woman, her first kiss motivated by genuine feeling rather than obligation or expectation. It felt like coming home. When they broke apart, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Then we face the gossips together. We hold our heads high and live our lives. Anyone who knows us will know the truth." August arrived with cooling temperatures and the promise of autumn. Lydia's wagon had been repaired and sat in Nathan's barn, but they had all quietly acknowledged that there was no reason to move it yet. The children were settled and happy. Lydia had saved almost $40 from her wages, and the relationship between Lydia and Nathan had deepened into something solid and real. One evening, Nathan gathered everyone in the main room. Clara, Thomas, and Emma sat on the sofa with Lydia, while Maria stood by with a knowing smile. Nathan looked nervous, which was unusual for him. "I have got something important to say," he began, "and I wanted to say it to all of you, not just your mother." Clara perked up with interest. Thomas leaned forward. Emma just smiled, content. "When your mother and you children came here 2 months ago, it was supposed to be temporary, a place to catch your breath and figure things out." Nathan looked at each of them in turn. But somewhere along the way, this stopped feeling temporary. It started feeling like you belonged here, like this place was more of a home with you in it. He turned his attention to Lydia, pulling something from his pocket. It was a simple gold ring with a small but beautiful sapphire. "This was my mother's ring," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "Sam gave it to her when he adopted us and made us a real family. She gave it to me before she died and told me to give it to a woman who understood what family really meant." He got down on one knee, and Lydia felt tears streaming down her face. "Lydia Dawson, I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other for 2 months. But in that time, you have become the best part of my day. You challenge me and inspire me and make me want to be better. And Clara, Thomas, Emma, you three have filled a hole in my life I did not even know was there." He looked back at Lydia. "I am not just asking you to marry me. I am asking if you will let me be a father to your children, if you will let me spend the rest of my life loving all 4 of you, if you will make us a family of 5. The silence stretched for a heartbeat. Then Clara spoke up, her voice clear and certain. "I think you should say yes, Mama. Nathan is better than Papa ever was." Thomas nodded vigorously. "Nathan teaches me things and does not get angry when I make mistakes." Even Emma seemed to understand something important was happening. "Nathan nice," she said firmly. Lydia looked at her children's hopeful faces, then at Nathan's expression of love and vulnerability, and felt the last of her fear melt away. This was right. This was real. This was the family they all deserved. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with joy. "Yes to all of it. Yes to marriage. Yes to family. Yes to building a life together." Nathan slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. The children crowded around them, and Maria was crying happy tears in the corner. In that moment, surrounded by love, Lydia felt the broken pieces of her life clicking into place in a new pattern, one that was stronger and more beautiful than anything that had come before. They were married 3 weeks later in the little church in Shoshone. Lydia wore a simple cream-colored dress that Maria helped her sew, and Nathan wore his best suit with a wildflower boutonniere that Clara had insisted on. The children stood up with them, Clara as maid of honor, Thomas as best man, and Emma scattering flower petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy. The church was full. Pete and Jake were there, cleaned up and grinning. Mrs. Henderson and the sewing circle ladies filled a pew. Mr. Patterson from the school board attended, giving Lydia an approving nod. Even some of Nathan's neighboring ranchers came, men who respected him and were happy to see him finding joy again. Elizabeth Carmichael was notably absent, having left for San Francisco the week after the engagement was announced. The pastor pronounced them husband and wife, and when Nathan kissed Lydia, the congregation erupted in applause. As they walked back down the aisle together, Lydia saw her future stretching out before her, teaching at the school, raising her children with a man who truly loved them, building a life in this small Idaho town surrounded by mountains and good people. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up outside and enough food to feed half the county. Maria had outdone herself, and neighbors had contributed pies and cakes and roasted meats. There was music and dancing, and Lydia found herself passed from partner to partner, laughing until her sides hurt. But the best dance was with Nathan as the sun set behind the mountains. He held her close and whispered in her ear, "Happy, Mrs. Zimmerman." "Happier than I ever imagined possible, Mr. Zimmerman," she replied. "You have not seen anything yet," Nathan promised. "This is just the beginning." As autumn settled over southern Idaho, Lydia started her teaching position. The cabin behind the school had been fixed up beautifully, with Nathan doing most of the carpentry work himself. But they only used it as a backup for nights when weather made the ride to the ranch difficult. The ranch was home now, for all of them. Lydia discovered she loved teaching. Her students ranged from 6-year-old beginners to 14-year-old boys who towered over her, but she managed them all with a firm hand and genuine affection. Word spread that the new teacher was excellent, and enrollment increased. Clara started attending her mother's school, beaming with pride. At home, the children blossomed under Nathan's patient fathering. He legally adopted all 3 of them that winter, a simple hearing before the territorial judge that made it official. They were Zimmermans now, all of them. Thomas cried happy tears when the judge declared it so. Clara hugged Nathan so hard he pretended she had cracked his ribs. Emma just smiled her 3-year-old smile and said, "Papa Nathan." The name stuck, Papa Nathan. It was how all 3 children referred to him from that day forward. In December, Lydia realized she was pregnant. She told Nathan on Christmas Eve, after the children were finally asleep. Their excitement over the new toys Nathan had made them exhausting them into dreams. "We are going to have a baby," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. Nathan's expression cycled through shock, joy, wonder, and a flash of fear. Lydia understood. His first wife and child had died in childbirth. "I am healthy," she said gently. "I have had 3 successful pregnancies. The doctor in town is competent. It will be all right." "Promise me," Nathan said, his voice raw. "Promise me you will be careful. I promise. And you have to promise me you will not worry yourself sick for the next 7 months." "That I cannot promise," Nathan said, but he was smiling. He pulled her into his arms and held her close. "A baby. Our baby. A family of 6. "A family of 6, Lydia agreed, and felt contentment settle over her like a warm blanket. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Lydia continued teaching through May, her students delighted by the prospect of their teacher having a baby. Clara, now 8, appointed herself expert advisor on all things baby-related, much to everyone's amusement. In early June 1879, almost exactly 1 year after Robert had abandoned them on that dusty road, Lydia went into labor. Doc Henderson came to the ranch, along with Mrs. Henderson and Maria, and together they turned the bedroom into a birthing room. Nathan wore a path in the floorboards downstairs, pacing and worrying. Pete and Jake kept him company, though they were not much help. The children stayed at the Hendersons' house in town, sparing them the worry. After 8 hours of labor, as the sun set behind the mountains painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Lydia delivered a healthy baby boy. He came into the world screaming his displeasure at the transition, his tiny fists waving, and Lydia fell instantly in love. "It is a boy," Doc Henderson announced, carrying the cleaned and wrapped baby downstairs. "Mother and child are both healthy. You can go up now, Nathan." Nathan took the stairs 3 at a time. He burst into the room to find Lydia propped up in bed, looking exhausted and radiant, cradling their son. "Meet Noah Samuel Zimmerman," she said softly. "Named for his father and the man who taught his father what family means." Nathan approached slowly, almost reverently. He looked down at his son, at the tiny perfect features and dark hair, and tears streamed down his face unchecked. "He is perfect," Nathan whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for giving me this family. Thank you for loving me." "Thank you for finding us," Lydia replied. "Thank you for stopping that day instead of riding past. Thank you for seeing us as worth helping. Thank you for giving my children a real father and giving me a real partner." Nathan sat carefully on the edge of the bed and wrapped his arm around Lydia, the two of them looking down at their son. In that moment, Lydia thought back to that terrible day a year ago, standing beside a broken wagon, abandoned and terrified. She had thought her life was over. She had thought there was no way forward. She had been so wrong. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things. Sometimes being broken down is what allows something better to be built. Sometimes family finds you in the most unexpected ways. The next day, they brought the children home to meet their new brother. Clara was gentle and careful, Thomas was curious and full of questions, and Emma wanted to hold him immediately. They all gathered in the big bed, 6 people who had become a family not through blood alone but through choice and love and showing up for each other every single day. "Now you have a family of 6, Clara observed, grinning at Nathan. "Now we have a family of 6, Nathan corrected gently. "We are all in this together." Over the following years, the Zimmerman family continued to grow and thrive. The ranch prospered under Nathan's careful management. Lydia taught for 5 more years before Noah started school, and she decided to focus on the ranch and the children. Clara grew into a confident young woman who shocked everyone by declaring she wanted to be a doctor. Nathan encouraged her, setting aside money for medical school back east. Thomas discovered a talent for working with horses, and by the time he was 15, people were bringing their difficult horses to him for training. Emma remained the family diplomat, the one who could smooth over any argument with her gentle wisdom. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Grace in 1881 and another son, Matthew, in 1883. The house that had seemed too big for a single man was suddenly full of noise and love and the controlled chaos of 5 children. Maria remained with them until her death in 1892, surrounded by the family she had helped build. Her last words were to tell Nathan and Lydia that she was proud of them, that Sam would have been proud of what they had created. Robert never returned. Eventually, word filtered back that he had died in a mining accident in Nevada in 1880. Lydia felt sadness for the man he could have been, but mostly she felt grateful. His abandonment, as terrible as it had led her to something infinitely better. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Nathan and Lydia stood on the porch watching their children play in the yard. Clara was home from her first year of medical school, regaling her siblings with stories of her studies. Thomas was showing Noah how to throw a rope. Emma was helping Grace and Matthew build a castle out of wooden blocks. "You ever think about that day?" Nathan asked, slipping his arm around Lydia's waist. "The day I found you by the broken wagon." "All the time," Lydia admitted. "I think about how terrified I was, how lost I felt, how certain I was that my life was over. And now I know it was just beginning," Lydia said, leaning into his embrace. "You saved us, Nathan. You saved all of us." "No," Nathan said firmly, turning her to face him. "You saved yourself. You had the courage to accept help when you needed it, the strength to build a new life, the wisdom to trust again. I just gave you a safe place to do it." "We saved each other," Lydia compromised, smiling. "You gave me a family when I thought mine was broken, and I gave you everything," Nathan finished. "You gave me everything. A wife who challenges and inspires me. Children who fill my days with joy. A home that feels complete. A reason to be grateful every single day." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, a kiss that held 10 years of shared joys and struggles, of partnership and deep, abiding love. When they broke apart, Clara was watching them with a soft smile. "You two are disgustingly romantic," she called out, "but I hope I find what you have someday." "You will," Lydia assured her. "When the time is right, when you meet the right person, you will know." As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the Idaho sky in brilliant colors, the Zimmerman family gathered for dinner. The table was crowded and loud, with everyone talking over each other, reaching for bread, and laughing at Thomas's exaggerated stories. It was chaotic and wonderful, and everything Lydia had never dared dream of during those dark days of her first marriage. After dinner, after the children were in bed, Nathan and Lydia walked out to the ridge that overlooked the ranch. They could see the lights of Shoshone twinkling in the distance, could hear cattle lowing softly in the night, could smell sage and pine on the cool breeze. "I have been thinking," Nathan said, "about expanding the herd next year. Pete thinks we could handle another 50 head. "That would mean hiring another hand," Lydia pointed out. "True. But Thomas will be working full-time soon, and that boy is worth 2 regular hands when it comes to horses." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "I want to make sure this ranch stays strong for our children, that they have something solid to build their lives on, whether they choose to stay or go." "They will have more than the ranch," Lydia said. "They will have the knowledge that they are loved unconditionally, that they have a place to come home to always. That family is not just about blood, but about choosing to show up for each other every day. You taught them that, Nathan. You taught all of us that." "Sam taught me," Nathan replied. "I am just passing it forward." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. Lydia thought about the long journey that had brought her here, the pain and loss that had preceded the joy. She thought about Robert, and wondered if he had ever found whatever he was looking for. She hoped he had found some measure of peace before he died. But mostly she thought about the man standing beside her, the man who had stopped to help a desperate woman and 3 frightened children. The man who had seen them not as a burden but as a family waiting to happen. The man who had loved them all into wholeness. "Thank you," she said softly, "for perhaps the 1,000th time in their marriage." "For what?" Nathan asked, also for perhaps the 1,000th time. "For stopping that day. For seeing us, for loving us, for making us a family of 5 and then 6 and then 7 and then 8. Nathan smiled, pulling her close. "Best decision I ever made, though technically you gave me a family of 5 that day too. I was alone." Now I have you and Clara and Thomas and Emma and Noah and Grace and Matthew and Maria and Pete and Jake and this whole big, messy, wonderful family. You gave me that." "We gave it to each other," Lydia said, and kissed him under the vast Idaho sky, surrounded by the life they had built together from the broken pieces of their pasts. Years continued to pass, each one adding its own stories to the family tapestry. Clara became one of the first female doctors in Idaho, returning to open a practice in Shoshone. Thomas took over the horse training side of the ranch operations and gained a reputation as the best horse trainer in 3 counties. Emma married a good man, a teacher from Boise, and they settled in town, giving Nathan and Lydia their first grandchildren. Noah followed his father into ranching, working alongside Nathan and eventually becoming a full partner in the operation. Grace became a lawyer, another pioneering woman in a male-dominated field. Matthew, the youngest, surprised everyone by becoming a pastor, taking over the pulpit at the Shoshone church. In 1900, Nathan and Lydia celebrated their 21st wedding anniversary. They were in their 50s now, with gray threading through their hair and laugh lines etched around their eyes. The ranch house they had filled with children now often filled with grandchildren, and Lydia had taken to keeping a jar of peppermints specifically for small visitors. On the anniversary of the day they met, now a date they celebrated as much as their wedding day, they took the wagon out to the spot where Nathan had first found Lydia with her broken wheel. Someone had built a homestead there years ago, and it was now a thriving small farm, but they could still identify the exact location. 21 years ago, I was standing right here thinking my life was over, Lydia said, looking at the now unfamiliar landscape. I had no idea that the best parts of my life had not even started yet. 21 years ago, I was riding home from town thinking about whether to buy new bulls or wait another year, Nathan replied. I had no idea I was about to meet the woman who would change everything. The woman who would give me the family I had always wanted. Do you ever regret it? Lydia asked, not for the first time over the years. Taking on 3 children that were not yours, all the complications and expenses and worry, Nathan's answer was immediate and firm as it always was. Not for one single second. Those children are mine in every way that matters. I would not trade a moment of it, not even the difficult times, because it all led us here. They stood together, hands clasped, looking out at the land they had worked and the life they had built. In the distance, they could see the ranch house, smoke rising from the chimney where Maria's successor was cooking dinner. They could see cattle grazing peacefully. They could see the barn that Thomas had rebuilt last year, bigger and better than before. We did good, Nathan said softly. We did, Lydia agreed. We took broken pieces and made something beautiful. As they climbed back into the wagon to head home, Lydia thought about the young woman she had been, desperate and abandoned and terrified. She thought about the cowboy who had stopped to help, who had seen potential where others might have seen only burden. She thought about the leap of faith they had both taken, choosing to build something new from the ruins of what had been. Family, she had learned, was not about perfection. It was not about never struggling or never facing hardship. It was about showing up. It was about choosing each other again and again, through good times and bad. It was about creating a safe place where people could be themselves, make mistakes, grow and change and become who they were meant to be. Nathan had given her that. She had given it to him. Together, they had given it to their children, who were now giving it to their own children. The legacy would continue, rippling forward through generations, all because a cowboy had stopped to help a woman with a broken wagon wheel. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose and purple, Nathan and Lydia rode home together. They were older now, slower, but their love had only deepened with time. They knew each other's rhythms, could communicate with a look, finished each other's sentences. They had grown together like two trees planted side by side, their roots intertwining, supporting each other through storms and droughts and seasons of plenty. When they reached the house, Noah was waiting on the porch with his wife and two young children. "We thought we would come for dinner," he said, grinning. "Hope that is all right." "Always," Nathan said, ruffling his son's hair affectionately even though Noah was now taller than him. "Family is always welcome." Inside, the table was set and the house filled with the sounds and smells of home. As they sat down to eat, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Lydia caught Nathan's eye across the table. He smiled at her, that same warm smile that had made her heart skip 21 years ago, and she smiled back. "What are you thinking about, Grandma?" asked Noah's daughter, tugging on Lydia's sleeve. Lydia looked around the table at the faces she loved, at the family that had grown from that moment of crisis and kindness on a dusty Idaho road. "I am thinking about how blessed I am," she said honestly. "How a terrible day turned into the beginning of the most wonderful life." "Tell us the story again," the little girl demanded, "about how Grandpa found you and said you had a family of 5. It was a story they had all heard dozens of times, but Nathan launched into it again with enthusiasm, adding details and flourishes that made the children giggle. Lydia listened, remembering the reality behind the now polished tale, remembering the fear and the desperation, and the overwhelming relief when this good man had offered help with no strings attached. She had told him that day that she did not understand why he was helping. Now, after 21 years of marriage, after building a life and a family together, she understood completely. He had helped because that was who he was. He had helped because he believed people should help each other. He had helped because he saw past the immediate situation to the possibility beyond it, and in helping her, he had helped himself. He had filled the empty spaces in his own life. He had found the family he had been searching for. They had healed each other, saved each other, completed each other. As the evening wore on and the grandchildren eventually fell asleep in various laps and corners, Nathan and Lydia found themselves once again on the porch, in their familiar rocking chairs, watching the stars emerge. "You think we would have been happy if we had never met?" Nathan asked, a philosophical question he sometimes pondered late at night. "I think we would have survived," Lydia said carefully. "I think I would have taught school and raised my children alone and made a life. I think you would have run the ranch and been a good man who helped his neighbors. But happy, truly happy, I do not think either of us would have been as happy as we are together. We fit," Nathan said simply. "We just fit." It was true. They fit together in a way that felt inevitable, as if the universe had always intended for them to find each other. The circumstances had been terrible, but the result had been miraculous. "I love you," Lydia said as she said every night. "Thank you for giving me this life." "I love you," Nathan replied as he replied every night. "Thank you for saying yes." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. Two people who had taken a chance on each other, and one. Two people who had turned tragedy into triumph, who had built something lasting and beautiful from the broken pieces of their pasts. In the house behind them, their family slept safe and secure. In the barn, horses whickered softly. In the distance, cattle settled for the night. All around them, the ranch they had built together breathed and lived, a testament to what could be accomplished when two people chose to work together, to love each other, to show up every single day. Lydia thought about the young mother she had been, standing beside a broken wagon with no hope and no future. She thought about the miracle of Nathan riding up just when she needed him most. She thought about the family of 5 he had promised her that day, and how they had exceeded that promise, creating something even bigger and more wonderful. "Thank you for stopping," she whispered into the darkness. Nathan heard her, as he always did. He reached over and took her hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of decades of practice. "Thank you for letting me," he replied. And there, under the vast Idaho sky, surrounded by the life they had built and the love they had created, Nathan and Lydia Zimmerman sat together in perfect contentment. They had started as 2 broken people and 3 frightened children. They had become a family of 5, and then 6, and then 8, and now their family included grandchildren and a legacy that would outlive them both. It had all started with a broken wagon wheel, an act of kindness, and a choice to trust. It had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. It had become, quite simply, everything. As the stars wheeled overhead and the night wrapped around them like a blanket, Lydia let her eyes drift closed, Nathan's hand warm in hers. She thought about telling him one more time how grateful she was, how much she loved him, how miraculous their life together had been, but he already knew. After 21 years, some things did not need to be said. They were simply understood, felt in every shared glance and gentle touch, woven into the fabric of their daily lives. They had found each other when they both needed finding. They had built a family when they both needed family. They had created love when they both needed love. And that, Lydia thought as sleep began to claim her, was the greatest gift of all. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just enduring, but flourishing. Not just making do, but making something beautiful. The cowboy had stopped that day and said, "Now you have a family of 5. But what he had really given her was hope. What they had really created together was a home. And what they had really built was a love that would last forever, rippling forward through generations. A testament to the power of kindness, courage, and choosing each other every single day. In the morning, they would wake to another day of their beautiful, ordinary life. There would be chores to do and meals to cook and ranch business to handle. There would be grandchildren to spoil and children to advise and a community to be part of. There would be all the small, precious moments that made up a life well lived. But for now, they sat together in the darkness. 2 people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something lasting from the rubble of disaster, who had proved that sometimes the worst moments lead to the very best things. The Zimmerman family was home together, whole. And that was everything